Okay, thanks again to everyone who has joined. We'll keep on letting people in just in case anyone's running a bit late or is taking a minute or two to get on. That's no problem. Please note that today's webinar will be recorded so that a video can be sent to all registrants afterwards. And please also keep an eye on the chat section during the webinar where we'll be putting messages and answering questions. Finally, we'd just like to request that everyone checks that they are on mute, please, just to save any background noise causing any distraction. So today is the 6th episode in our series of online training webinars called Mastering Seating Assessments. And today's event will be all about the provision of seating for people with multiple sclerosis, or MS as it's commonly known. So we're very pleased to have Liana Pretorius with us today as our guest speaker, who I'll introduce in a few minutes. So I'm sure you're all looking forward to hearing from Liana as much as we are. So before we get going, just a quick look at the agenda. So we're going to be looking at the various risks and symptoms that people with MS live with that should be looked for and considered when specifying seating for them. We'll discover how to support them with proper postural and positioning solutions, enhanced mobility and much more. We'll learn about different chair types that are available and the functionalities these can offer to help you enhance the lives of your clients. So we're really wanting to help everyone here today. And this will then be brought to life at the end by George Hulbert, who is one of our in-house seating specialists. And he'll demonstrate what some of the functionalities we've talked about, show what they look like in real life on actual chairs from our range. At the end of the webinar today, we'll have a live Q&A session. So please keep a note of any questions you would like to ask. You can pop these on the chat during the presentation for us to discuss at the end, or otherwise you're welcome to unmute and ask them out loud as well if you prefer. Either's no problem. So before I introduce Liana, I thought we'd just quickly introduce who we are, Vivid Care. We are a company who supplies specialist seating and mobility products and care beds. We used to be called Yorkshire Care Equipment, which is a name some of you might recognise, but we rebranded to be Vivid Care to reflect the work we do right across the UK now, both in acute and community care. So our mission, as you can see there at Vivid, is to enhance lives through advancing care. And we're really working every day to enhance the quality of life of the people we work with and those with complex care needs by supporting them and you, the healthcare professionals, with resources and equipment. We're actually part of Core Care Group, so we've got sister companies Innova Care Concepts who specialise in hoisting and installed healthcare projects, and then there's Aquadapt who help with home adaptations. So without further ado, I am very pleased to hand you over to the experienced hands of Liana. Liana's worked in occupational therapy for many years, got over 30 years of experience, she was telling us, in Neuro Rehab. So we're looking forward to learning a lot from Liana today. Welcome. I'll just stop sharing for you.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. So I'm Liana Pretorius. As Braden said, I've been an OT for 30 years. I studied in South Africa, worked across the world, and then settled in the good old UK. Have been here for 24 years, and in all that time have sort of worked in neuro, in both acute, but more in the community than anything else. Let me just share my screen for you. Can you see that all right?
Yes, we're seeing that. Thank you.
Okay, let me just get, there you go. Right, yes, fabulous. So, so as I said, I've worked in adult neurology for a very long time and have seen things come and go. Today we're going to talk about MS. I've got about 20 minutes, so I'm just going to go straight into it. So multiple sclerosis is an autoimmune condition of the central nervous system. Your nerves, they all have this protective covering around them called myelin. And what seems to happen with the MS is that it interrupts and it damages that outer coating. I always say to my patients, think of your nerves like a telephone cord, and it's that cord, the covering of the cord, that gets damaged. What that outer coating does is it helps the messages, the connections to send these messages down the nerve. And so what happens when that gets damaged, that is when you see that there's interruptions and intermittent signals that sometimes comes through. And sometimes most people don't know they have MS. Some people, their first symptoms is their vision that seems to go. So most damage that is occurred in the brain, in the spinal cord. That what they need to do is they will do a scan. They do an MRI scan of your brain, and they would be able to see the lesions. There's very clear criteria before they can give you them a full diagnosis. Unfortunately, there is no cure for MS. It is a progressive disease, but research have come on so much now in the last couple of years that they're actually able to minimize any ongoing damage and to try and manage the symptoms much, much better than what they used to. Now, prevalence is always an interesting thing. So you can see that over the years, the estimations of people with MS have grown quite significantly. We've gone from a study in 2010 from 127,000 to the latest studies was published by the MS Society is 150,000. And the question is, so why do we think it is increasing? Well, the evidence suggests that it's increasing over the last couple of decades, probably because we now have better neurological services than what we had in the past. We are getting better at diagnosing people early on, meaning that we get them early, and therefore we can start working with people with MS early. Also, people tend to live longer now in general, and they live longer with MS. And I think that's why the prevalence seems to be got greater. There was a study that was done in Norway for over 80 years, where they said that that people got less vitamin D, and people who smoked more tend to be more at risk of developing MS. And I think the MS rate in the Scandinavian countries, in those places, is slightly higher. And they have said there's this link with vitamin D. So there is typically about 4 types of MS you would see. The first one is quite rare. In my 30 years, I've seen one guy that was diagnosed with a clinically isolated syndrome, which is basically the very first episode of neurological symptoms. Now, what they say is it can or it might not develop into complete full-blown MS, but the symptoms sort of vary from person to person. It is commonly include bladder dysfunction, vision problems, difficulty with coordination and balance, walking. But as I say, I don't think it's as common. The most common type we see is the relapse remitting MS, of which about 85% of people that with a diagnosis of MS are initially diagnosed with relapse remitting. And what we tend to see is that they have clear attacks, and then with new and progressive symptoms, and then it sort of looks almost like they have a bit of a recovery or a remission, and then they have another lapse and relapse, and that can go on for a good number of years. And then as it progresses more and more, it then moves on to becoming secondary progressive MS. Now, some people with secondary progressive MS eventually go on to sort of, as I say, slowly progress over time, more and more and more. Their decline gets worse, their disability increases over time. but everybody's experience is unique because our brains is all wired very uniquely, and where the MS is doing the damage is going to be very unique to that particular bit of your brain. The last one is called primary progressive MS. Now, about 15% of people with MS are diagnosed with primary progressive. Primary progressive is the more aggressive of the MSs that you would see. There's no quite differentiation between they have a sort of a period of relapse and then stabilizing. It's tend to be sort of a slow downhill all the way. They have longer periods and slightly quicker incidence of disability that we tend to see. Now, the main symptoms that we probably all know with MS is fatigue. I think that is probably the number one symptom that any patient with MS will come and talk to you about, is fatigue. Part of it is because of the disease process. They have fatigue called lassitude fatigue. This type of fatigue is something way beyond what any of us could experience if we don't have MS. Then, of course, it will also affect whatever nerve it's chewing on. So whether you have difficulty with your mobility problems, walking, we tend to see a lot of motor problems, as I say, coordination, balance problems, all those things that comes with your motor cortex. Some people will have vision problems, not everybody. Then also there's the sensory element of it. People will experience sensory loss, so they will have numbness and tingling, different parts of their body. With that might also come muscle stiffness and spasms. Probably the most common other symptom we see with people with MS is the bowel and the bladder symptoms. Your bowel and your bladder is a muscle, and it has a nerve. And therefore, what will happen is as that gets damaged, the people will start having problems with overactive bladders or starting to have lots of problems with their bowels. And having bowel and bladder problems will sort of link back to your fatigue. So it becomes this big old vicious circle that people get trapped in. So the question is, why does good seating matter? Now, good sitting posture allows us to do our daily tasks. Most of us, when we sit in our chairs, we don't even think twice about when we're doing our work and when we're going on doing things, about keeping our balance, how stable we are we in pain, how comfortable we are. And if you are having to do work and your body is having to battle to keep you upright, you're already fatigued as it is, eventually your posture is the one that's going to start suffering really, really quickly. And therefore, the position of your pelvis is the basis for every assessment you do. It doesn't matter what is wrong with your patient, it is where is that pelvis? The pelvis will lead the rest of the body. If you can't maintain a midline position, you're going to end up stooping over, or you're going to be sort of wandering to the side. And having the correct support from your chair, because what we want the chairs to do is to help you hold your body, so that your body doesn't have to work as hard to, number one, keep you upright and try and stabilize you. So this is the question I ask for everything I do with my neuro patients, the so what question. And I think it's a very important question, because what is it that this patient of yours is going to get from sitting out or having a good seat to sit in? People say, oh, I'm in pain. My question is, so what is you're in pain? What is the pain stopping you from doing? Now, if you don't have a good posture and you're not well supported in your seating, the same thing that will happen is, what is your bad sitting posture going to do? What is it going to stop you from doing? Because that is where we get our goals from. Now, I'm an OT. We love a model. And I think the PO model is probably one of the better models that I found in my practice. when we really have to think about there's our MS patients and what it is they want to do with sitting out. So the first thing that we're going to look at specifically, very important, is the person, the patient in front of you. How old are they? What is their general health they've got? Lot of patients we see have comorbidities. We've got a couple of patients that's got both Parkinson's and MS. We've got patients with MS and functional neuro disorders. We have patients that sort of, have got, as I say, quite a cancer in MS. So you have to take all that into consideration. Think about the person. What is their body weight? Would they need to have certain considerations? If they tiny little people, some of our patients is only 5'1", really, short stature. We got really tall people with lanky legs. Also, our slightly bariatric size patients. So we have to think about that, and how does what they go into, how is that going to affect how they sit? Can that person maintain their sitting balance? If you can't maintain your sitting balance when you're in a chair that's not supporting you, you're going to wilt effectively. And that's when we see people starting to lean off to the side. Once they get tired, the head will go one way, and because your head is about 3 pounds of blancmange, gravity will grab it and will pull you towards the one side. The other thing is to think about your level of physical function and independence. Can this person transfer? Are they able to relieve their pressure? Can they shift around in the chair? Transfers is really important. Can they do a sit-to-stand? Are they going to need help to do that? Are they now to the point where they need a transfer aid? What type of transfer aid might they need? Are they now being hoisted? So that's one of the things to really think about, and also their pressure relief. I myself like to do the Waterlow score. It's a good way of keeping track of a patient's risk of developing pressure. The other big important thing is people's mood, the person itself. So think of the person and how is all of this affecting them? Some people we see are newly diagnosed and coming to terms with they've now got this long-term condition that they're going to have to learn to manage, and the impact this is having on their life. Some people have lived with it for a while, but it is sort of having to learn to live with the deterioration that sometimes come with relapses. Pain is very important, as important as fatigue. If your person is in pain, you're going to have to think about spending 4 or 5 hours in the chair, not moving around. What is that going to do for their pain? Lots of people, as I say, come with musculoskeletal problems. So they can either have contractures, they can have range of movement problems, they might be kyphotic, there might be scoliosis. So you have to think about when they sit, where is their body going, where's their head going? Of course, with any neuro condition comes abnormal tone and spasticity, and thinking about if someone has spasms, how will that affect how they sit in the chair? Also, if they are now not able to move their muscles as much, they will be atrophy. So what happens? How does that influence them? We talked a bit about skincare already. So think about their circulatory status. Have they got any history of skiff brain down before? Continence is very important, because if someone is unable to manage their bowel and bladder, you're going to think about the impact that the moisture is going to have on their skin. So thinking about when they sit in this chair for a long time, that how is it, does it breathe? Does it help their skin breathe? Fatigue, we talked a lot already about it, but fatigue is one of major big things. How long can they sit in the chair for? And if they get tired, have they got the ability to relieve that? The same with the pressure, the same with the pain. The next very important thing is thinking about what is it that your person wants to do. I'm an OT. Occupation is what we do. Occupation is what we do, the things we do to give us purpose and meaning in life. And that can range from anything, being able to feed yourself, brush your teeth, comb your hair, put your lippy on, being able to just sit and chat with your family, to watch your favorite telly program. So it's very important that when we think about a seating assessment with patients, what are they going to do in that chair? What is that chair going to allow them to do that they now can't do, or that they're really, really struggling with? Think about their routine. How does your seating, what you're going to give them, fit into their routine? A lot of times we get asked, oh, can a patient come out? But they can't tolerate to sit out for more than an hour or 2 hours. And what ends up happening is that the carers only comes back in 4 hours. So think about the routine they're going in. How do we sit them out? We still have a fair bit of patients with MS that still works. Some of, and you have to also think about if they're going to work in the office or they're going to work from home, if they spend a lot of time sitting. You need to think about how is their productivity, how is that seat going to affect it? And then, of course, leisure. We are people who like to go and have fun. Things that work or can't always work. We need to have a bit of fun element in our life, something else that gives us a bit of meaning. So you need to think about that aspect. The other thing is, does it promote your patient's health? If you've got someone who is needing to feed themselves, but they can't because they're in bed and they can't get their hands up to their mouth, or they're on a peg and they need to be upright a little bit, would your chair help them to sit up, being able to do that, but also keep them healthy? And then lastly, think about the environment. So we need to think about the society and what that person lives in. What goes on around them? Who is their support network? What's the actual culture they sit in sometimes? Think about the physical aspect of patients. What room is it going to go in? Is it going to be cluttered? Is there actually space for it to go? Think about what maybe aids they need to have with them. Lots of people want a table. Some of our patients end up with eye gaze systems that needs to be on wheels, or all kinds of other aids that comes in. Environmentally, if they have someone come over to come and visit them, lots of my patients is very aware that they don't want to look like they're in a hospital. So they want also to have the aesthetics of when they sit in a chair. Other thing to think about is the temporal, relating to their time of day. When are they in that chair? What happens? Then also lastly, as I say, we talked about the communication side of things. When people get really tired, a lot of their symptoms will increase. So think about our patients who are maybe working from home and they are on Zoom calls all day, and they're having to communicate. And the tighter they get, the harder it becomes, especially if their seating isn't quite supportive enough. Then just very, very basic assessment principles that I always have in the back of my mind. The height of your seat must allow your users to sit with their feet flat on the floor and think about what they wear on their feet. Flat, it's better to say, show me what type of shoes are you going to be sitting in, whether it be trainers, slippers, boots, or whatever it is. The width of the chair is very important, that we have enough support to stop them from leaning. So how wide the chair is, but also if it's too big, they wilt. If it's too narrow, they wilt over the top as well. Seat depth, so how long is it between from your bottom to the back of your knee, how that support your femur needs, to make sure that if it's too long, then it pushes up against your knee, back of your knees, it will give you pressure problems. If it's not long enough, people find that they will start tipping forward. Other very big thing to think about is people's armrests. So think about when they sit in the chair, and if you give them, especially if you give them pressure care to sit in, will they be slightly raised? So when they put their arm on the armrest, where is that elbow support going? The handset is the other thing to think about. Number one, can they operate it? Think about which side the handset gets to go, and also whether your patient can cognitively safely operate this chair. Think about the back. It should be high enough to support your upper limbs and your shoulders, and avoid pressure onto your large joints. The other big thing is the fabric, what you put them on, especially if people's got continence problems. Comfort is very important, but also you need to think about the pressure things. But very importantly is to set goals with your client or your carers so that you know what it is that they want to achieve from sitting out, and how can you guys work together to do that. Just a quick word on funding. Funding is always an issue, especially in the NHS, but most places have got local community equipment stores. Now, it varies wildly what is available across the country. In some equipment stores, they'll have different, just one set of chairs that you can have. Others have slightly wider. I do have a lot of my patients that we help with private funding to buy specialist chairs if that is what they required and their local NHS services can't provide them with it. The other thing to think about, when we do have patients who get the progression is such now that they've got to a certain point where their MS is quite advanced, is to consider whether they would meet the continuing healthcare assessment checklist, and whether that will then give them fully NHS funding that will allow you to say, but for this, they need this chair, and then CHC, as it's also known, should then fund that for you. Yep, and that is me.
Thank you very, very much for that, Liana. That was extremely helpful. It's clear that you've got a massive amount of experience in it, so it's amazing to be able to learn from you. So just a reminder to everyone, please pop your questions on the chat if you have any, and we'll discuss them at the end during the Q&A session. Otherwise, again, you're welcome to unmute and ask them when we get to that stage. For now, however, we will hand it over to our seating specialist, George, who is in our video room with a few chairs. He'll talk through what some of the features we've talked about actually look like, and what it looks like practically. So George, I'll hand across to you.
Thanks very much, Braden, and thanks, Liana. That was very useful. I'm sure we'll get some chance for questions at the end. So I brought just a selection of chairs today, which may typically follow the progression of somebody's condition with MS. So starting with the Vela activity chair here, which I'll run through a few features, the Lento mobile rise and recline chair, and then finally the Lento tilting space care chair. So I'm just going to start with the activity chair. So as Liana mentioned, fatigue is one of the most prevalent parts of MS, and you'll appreciate sort of just doing general daily activities. So if it's washing or ironing, jobs around the house, you need assistance for that. And that's exactly what this chair is. May appear initially like an office chair, but it's a lot more than that. So you've got a considerable amount of adjustment with the chair. I've got some buttons underneath the armrest here, which can take me up and down. So very, very useful when working at, say, a kitchen worktop, or needing to access a drawer or wardrobe. That goes to a considerable height. And then also for when you're in the standard seating position, having the right height of chair, so it's going to be a lot easier to mobilise from that. We've also got some levers just down to the right here. So this allows me to adjust the rake of the seat, so forward tilt or backward tilt. So it might be that it's more comfortable for me to change my position and work in more of a perch, for example, if you were anning. Or then conversely, I'm feeling a little bit fatigued, so I recline back to have a rest. So there's a lot of flexibility there with the chair. And then we've also got a separate backrest angle adjustment, and that allows us to open up or close the back angle as required. So it's on a very stable base and quite a unique base. Normally you see like the 5-star caster base, which can actually be a bit of a trip hazard. This has got four individual wheels, good size wheels, and it means that you can mobilize. So with the heels and your shoes, so you can actually maneuver the chair forward and backwards. So in the afternoon, if you are feeling more fatigued, it's something that you can actually mobilize around the house on. And then for when you're transferring in and out of the chair, we've got a handle which we can have at either side. So this is a brake handle which, when I push forward, locks all casters. So now I've got something really secure and firm to be able to stand from, and also when I'm sitting back down. There's many other features available on it, such as different contoured cushions. If somebody needs more support, little lateral supports to keep them in a good midline position, headrests and so on. But this shows it in a typical configuration. You might say a starting configuration. You could either have a manual height adjust, or as this one's got, an electric height adjust. So as the condition unfortunately progresses, it might be that the patient needs assistance to physically get out of the chair, hence moving on to a rise and recline chair. But before we do that, we've got to have something which is going to be the right, as Liana mentioned, the right size, comfort, many things to consider when sitting in a chair, particularly for longer periods. So the Lento range is a very adjustable range of chairs, so we're actually able to really easily adjust the seat width of the chair. Got a screw knob, very simple at the back, so toolless adjustments. But what it also means is that if we did need to remove it altogether, so for side transfers or to help with personal care, if you're a carer, or applying a sling, that can be really useful. But what that then reveals is a height adjustable armrest section. So as Liana touched on, the importance of having the correct arm height. So what we're trying to do is prevent somebody leaning to one side to compensate, or if they've got shorter limbs or carry quite a lot of weight around the bottom area. This is designed so that it gives the correct armrest height adjustment, so that's really easy just to adjust up and down there. We can adjust the seat depth of the chair. Again, that's with a screw knob, so undo, and that will allow us to set the backrest, the whole back further back or further forward, depending what height we are, so we can support along the thigh there. So we've got a very simple operation. On this particular one, it's a 4-button handset, so we can separately adjust the backrest, and then we can also, we've got like a tilt in space mechanism, so the leg rest comes up and the backrest goes back a little way. So with the seat rake, that helps prevent somebody sliding out the chair, as in the front of the seat being slightly higher than the rear of the seat. And we're also distributing our pressure, our body weight, so much more evenly when we're reclined back, as opposed to all the weight going through the bottom, a little bit through our feet. We're now taking spreading the weight more evenly, and that eases the pain for the patients with MS. Now, another important feature with this chair is that rise recliners are notorious for kind of difficulty with when you're trying to assist somebody with something like a SARA steady or a return or other transfer aids, it's very difficult to work with them. And we've made this particular chair compatible with those aids. So in brief, you've got a very narrow arm here. You've got your front casters inset in, which means that when you open something like a stand aid or a SARA steady or so on, you can actually get the legs right the way under the chair here, and most importantly get somebody's calves right to the front of the leg rest. Otherwise, as we'll see so commonly, we get as far as we can, it ends up their bottom being at the front of the seat, and then we've either got a slouch seat position or the carers are having to physically assist in trying to get somebody to the back of the chair. And then lastly, it's got a portering handle at the back, which is quite rare for a rise and recliner. This is made particularly strong to actually work in this way. And for these patients that have got the particularly neuro patients who've maybe got a varying day-to-day condition, it may be one day they are able to mobilise a bit, perhaps on something like the chair we touched on, but if not, we can actually take them from room to room or move in different positions around the room so the carer can move the patient around. So it gives a little bit more flexibility than the typical rise and recline chair would do. And then with the lateral support here in the middle of the backrest, that just hugs somebody gently at the core to keep them in a good midline position. You see some fixed laterals on, like metal stems, which can be pressed quite hard if they're not in the right position. Well, this just gently hugs you at your core to keep you in a good midline. And then, as we touched on fabric earlier, this is a four-way stretch material, so it moves both forward and backward and side to side. Now, that's particularly important in terms of giving pressure relief and comfort. If you had something like a tough vinyl which has got no movement, it's a little bit like sitting on a board and kind of pointless having either your visco foam or gel underneath. Whereas with this stretch material, it means you get so much more immersion, so you're getting a lot better spread as you sat down on the chair and comfort. It also wicks away the moisture, the Dartex. It's a breathable material. So like we had earlier, if we're struggling to maintain your, or regulate your body temperature, then that can help with this. And then on the outside of the chair, we have a vinyl, or it can be a fabric. One thing to mention, these two chairs are kind of mocked up typically for, you might say, more of an acute hospital environment, but it's limitless in terms of the kind of patterns and colours and types you can have. But what is important is that particularly through the inner of the chair, or what we call the contact areas, that we get the right fabric type in this area where the patient's going to be sat. So moving on lastly to the tilt-in space care chair. So you can see this is altogether a higher chair, so it's on larger casters to ensure that you can easily get a hoist either from the front or through the side to hoist a patient into the chair. And with it being higher, you kind of working at more of a better height there for the carers. So this particular specification has got what we call a manual action, so you've got a little squeeze lever which allows you to control the tilt in space. It also allows you to independently adjust the backrest recline, and then you can also elevate the leg rests. Now, many different accessories for this, I won't run through them. The same, and at this point I won't go over again, but you've got exactly the same adjustment in terms of the seat width, the arm height, back height, seat depth, foot plate height. So to get the right chair for the patient with the correct comfort is really going to make a lot of difference to these patient types. So feel free to put any questions on the chat, which we'll try and answer, but I thought I'd just show a portfolio of some of our chairs that might typically show how a condition progresses from when somebody's more active to when they're hoisted. Is that okay, Brendan?
Brilliant. Thanks very much for that, George. As again, there's a huge amount into finding just the right chair for each different patient. There's so many things to take into consideration, but yeah, that kind of shows what the things to look for, the features that can help people. Now, the one thing which we haven't touched on a lot today, just before we go into our Q&A session, is obviously mobility products like power chairs, specialist wheelchairs. And that's for no other reason that there's so much to think about with them. You could actually run a whole webinar series on that alone. So we'll keep that for a separate webinar, but we did just want to highlight the fact that we are now actually also a official distributor of the Permobil range of specialist wheelchairs. So that includes a whole range of different options for indoor and outdoor use, standing wheelchairs, and just a lot of solutions which really gives people a lot more mobility and independence, which is often a great option for people with MS. So if you are looking for a specialist wheelchair, then please do reach out to us and we can help. We've actually got an in-house Permobil and mobility expert called Dave Jordan, and he's able to carry out thorough home assessments and consultations in our showroom as well, and bring clients through the process of creating bespoke solutions that meet their unique needs. So without further ado, let's move on to the question and answer session. I see there has been quite a lot coming into the chat, so thank you very much for sending all of those through. George and Liana, I will refer to you for a few of these, so I will just bring them up now. So referring to the first chair, the Vela chair, George, is this chair safe for the PT who has pain and balance issues, required MHRA? Sorry, I think you're muted.
Sorry, Brian, would you just reading that question again?
Yeah, is this chair safe for a person who has pain and balance issues?
Yeah, I'd quite like to particularly stress on the balance. It is a very, very stable chair. The actual manufacturers do a demonstration of it where they're standing on the corner of the chair and there is no movement there. It is a very secure and steady weighted base, and particularly using the central braking system as I showed, it gives a really secure transfer point on off. You can also use a swivel as well, which enables you to swivel through 90 degrees. So it is secure and designed, to assist with transfer.
Great, yeah, thanks. And what is the handle for?
Yes, so I should have mentioned. So this is simply a handle that this is an optional extra, but something that the carers can actually assist. So maybe as client's condition deteriorates further throughout the afternoon, become fatigued, can no longer pedal, if you like, themselves to move around. I've now got something that I can help manoeuvre the patient with the chair, and that can fold away out the way when not in use.
Perfect, thank you. And can the long brake handle be positioned for either left or right-handed use?
It can, yes, and you can get an extension to that as well, because we appreciate with MS, there's often restriction in terms of movement and where things need to be positioned. There was one, sorry, I'm just remembering now, one brand new feature which the manufacturers have brought in is something called Power Wheels. Very clever little device which just can be retrofit or can fit on a new version. And simply as it sounds, it's got a couple of wheels, one each side, with a very small little joystick, and that can help just a patient maneuver around the house. So again, another option if somebody's trying to maintain independence, they can maybe manage the chair themselves in the morning, but by the afternoon become fatigued. It's something that will maintain somebody's independence there. So that's brand new in terms of the manufacturer's offering.
Great, thank you. And can you also just confirm the names of each of the chairs, please? And does the foot plate angle on the lentos change to allow for drop foot?
Yes, so Vela activity chair, and then Lento mobile rise and recline chair, and then Lento tilting space care chair. So just to show you on the leg rest, so bringing that up, what we have here is an angle adjustable bolt, if you like, which now I'm actually unscrewing so to its limit, and what that means is that the footrest will open up into quite a significant angle there for somebody with plantar flexion or drop foot.
Perfect, thank you. Then we've got someone asking, we've got Lorna asking, what pressure relief rating does the chair have, and is it possible to remove and place the patient's own pressure cushion in situ?
Okay, so on both chairs, so on the tilting space care chair, this is a removable seat cushion, so I can literally take it out and it reveals then a seat board. So yes, we can put any patient cushion on there, such as Roho, J, full alternating air. So they've been designed in the way that what we don't really want to see is a cushion on top of a cushion, because it takes away then from back, arm height, foot plate height, etc. Might be difficult for you to see, but this is actually got gel nodules. In fact, if I just do the zip, you've actually got like a cooling gel. So you've got little airways there to help regulate body temperature and a slight cooling feel to it, but also prevents against shear heat lesions and will give a better pressure distribution. So we refer to it as a high risk cushion. As I mentioned, there's many different ways it can be scored, but we view this as a high risk gel cushion. And then in this chair, this has got a visco foam, so more of a medium risk. And this has actually got a wrap again over a removable cushion. So under the wrap, you could place a different cushion, or you could upgrade this chair to have a gel wrap. So gel in the seating area of the chair, so taking it to high risk. The reason we've got it kind of mocked up like this is that typically for somebody in a rise recline chair, they've got a little bit more mobility, wouldn't typically have as critical pressure issues. So that's why we've got it in a mid risk, whereas in a tilting space care chair, your patients are a lot more at risk.
Brilliant, thank you. Yeah, and I've got another question here about whether it's possible to upgrade on the pressure cushions as well. So yeah, thanks for confirming on that as well. And then we've got another question. If a patient is left in a tilted position in a tilting space chair in between a care call, is this restrictive or a deprivation of their liberty? Might be one for you, Liana.
Yeah, I'm gonna say defer to Liana.
Yes, we get this all the time. The first thing to say, deprivation of liberty is basically when someone's freedom is limited in some way, right? So that's the basic principle of it. It can be either because of their age or their mental health status or something. But the first thing we need to say is, do they have capacity to make this decision about sitting in the chair and how long they want to sit in the chair for? And if they have got capacity, then it's for us to work with our patients and talk to them about, right, let's see what can we do in between care calls. What is the alternatives? What do we need to do because you want to sit out. I say sometimes it's a bit like hostage negotiation, if I'm honest, because you have to look at all the options. Sometimes it's not what they want. Sometimes it's not what the family want. But literally our job is to be there and to say, look, this is what they want to do. How do we make this work for us? If someone hasn't got the capacity, and we are very clear that how we've done our assessment, documentation, I can't tell how important it is to document how you've come to your mental capacity assessment, how you come to your decision. It's then a best interest decision that you need to take with either the team or and the care team and the family. I spend a lot of my time involving the GPs into some of these best interest decisions. What you can't do is, if someone's up and roaming around, you can't put them in a chair knowing that they can't get out, right? Because then you're clearly trying to stop them from doing things. There's other ways around it. So that's why I said we have to be very clear. What is it that we're going to get from them sitting out? And then think about, as I said, whether if they can consent, we work with them. If they can't, it's then a best interest decision around what is best with them and for them. I don't know. Does that answer the question?
That's helpful. Thanks. Yeah, and it might be just worth mentioning, like I said, this is what they call a manual operation, tilting space care chair. So depending on somebody's cognitive ability, you can actually power it just like you can with a rise recline chair and a handset. There's many different modifications you can do to assist somebody, whether it's something as simple as bump-ons or different size buttons. So again, depending on somebody's cognitive ability, there is a facility with this chair for them or a carer to manoeuvre the chair themselves. But thanks, Liana, that's helpful.
Great, thank you both. George, another one for you. Does the Vela activity chair come in different sizes, for example, bariatric?
It does, yes. I'm pretty sure it's a 300 kg version they do in the bariatric sizing. And then you get a selection of different size of seats, so like a small, medium, large. Within that, of course, you've got quite a lot of adjustment. We can shorten the depth, we can outrig the arms. So there's quite a lot of flexibility within each model itself.
Brilliant. And then last one, just onto the Lentos again. Do the chairs come with lap belts for extra help keeping hips in place?
Yeah, so as standard on the tilting space care chair, we made sure that both the fixing points for a 2-point hip belt and also the fixing points for a 4-point belt, so where the strap comes over the thigh here, they are always as standard fitted to every chair, regardless of not of whether a belt goes out with the chair, just to make it a lot easier later down the line. If you do need to fit on a padded hip belt or 4-point belt, you've got these sliders, metal sliders there ready and for ease of fitting the equipment onto the chair.
Brilliant. We have just got a couple of people asking about costs, but we might get in touch with you afterwards individually if that's okay on that, because they can vary so much based on, you know, the accessories you choose, the configuration you choose. So we will pick that up with you separately if that's okay. Just a couple more coming in. This is a good Q&A session. Thanks everyone. Can you explain again how a stand aid can be used with the rise recliner chair, please?
Yeah, it might help actually. I've got a star of study here, so just to illustrate what I'm talking about. So the main differences I'm making between a standard rise recline chair and this is the thickness of the arm. So typically you'd have a 5 or 6 inch thick arm with a little caster at the bottom. So it means however wide we put the legs on the sofa, we just can't get it far enough back in. But in this sort of position here, because the casters are inset in and the arms are tailored in a way where the seat paddles will actually go straight over it, we can get the steady right in nice and close, so somebody's calves are right up against the back of the chair here. So when they do sit down, we've got the bottom to the back of the chair. So it's really down to where your front casters are positioned, your thickness of your arm, and then the height of your arm for the paddles. And it might be worth just showing you with the rise facility in terms of something like a return or ETAC transfer aid, because they've often got the section at the front there, which prevents getting it far enough back. So little detail, but the main front bar is actually set back by about 6 inches, and that's to allow to give more space to get those type of movement and handling aids in there.
Brilliant. And sorry, Sam, we missed yours. How long do the chairs take to make from ordering?
So this particular colourway here, we actually stock all ranges of our chairs in. So grey on the outside, Dartex through the middle, for the very reason of discharges, acceleration in condition, you know, somebody needing a chair very quickly, so we can sort that in a few days. If, of course, it's very much something more tailored, so fabric of their choice, extra accessories, you're talking more like the 6 to 8 weeks.
Perfect, fine. Great, thanks. Well, that was a good list of questions. And again, if anyone has got more questions that they want to ask, or they want to pick up a conversation after the event, please do reach out. We'd be glad to help and continue answering any queries that you do have. So we're always glad to hear from you. So I'll finish off then in the last 5 minutes. Just share my screen. We'd just like to point out that if you do have other questions that you might want to look online for instead of reaching out, although we would love to be able to help you if we can. We have a lot of resources on our website. We've built up a huge bank of different things, which include assessment checklists, which you can bring with you on your assessments. We've also got a detailed ebook titled A Guide to Seating Assessments for Healthcare Professionals. And then our bank also includes many blog articles about specialist seating, and right through to justification forms and templates that you might want to use if you're trying to get funding approval. And then also a collection of helpful training videos and recordings of previous webinars. So it really has it all. Please do go and have a look at all of the things in there. And then please also remember that we do have a team of in-house seating assessors who can join you for your seating assessments upon request. And they will basically come along with the chairs which they think might help each specific client, and they really want to help you find the right chair for each person. So if you do want to set one of these up, you can phone or email the office, or otherwise there is a page on our website which is vivid.care/assessments, and you can go on there and book an assessment in there. So future webinars, we have got another episode coming up in September, which will be episode 7, and that will be looking at mastering seating assessments for people with neuromuscular disorders. So that will be made live to register for in the next few days. So look out for that. And if you have any questions, again, let us know. But otherwise, thank you very, very much for joining. Thank you, Liana, again, for your time this afternoon. And we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.